Welcome to our new season of New Knowledge. I'm Mark Graham, the Executive Director here at the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator, and we're excited to produce this program along with our partners at the Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the town of Abingdon. Today, we're happy to welcome Jessica Harmon. She is a Southwest Virginia native and Senior Manager of Learning and Impact at the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, where she leads initiatives to strengthen regional nonprofits and evaluate their impact. With a background in finance and experience in community health and youth development, Jess brings a strategic, mission-driven approach to nonprofit growth. She's a certified trauma-informed care trainer and holds an MBA with a graduate certificate in business analytics from Radford University. Outside of work, she enjoys traveling, reading, and time with her husband and young son. So please welcome Jess Harmon to talk about building diverse leadership, effective board recruitment strategies here today on New Knowledge.
Thank you so much, Mark, for such a kind introduction. I'll share my slide. All right. Can anyone see my slides? Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So board recruitment. So before we get into it, I'm going to talk a little bit about what CNE is. So we're the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. So CNE envisions equitable, thriving, and just communities powered by healthy nonprofits. To achieve that vision, we are a champion, a learning partner, and an advisor to Virginia nonprofits. Through a strategic partnership with the Wellspring Foundation of Southwest Virginia, I am able to extend CNE services to nonprofits in Southwest Virginia at no fee of service. So anyone that has any questions around the nonprofit sector outside of your mission-driven work, but all of those pesky structural pieces, please reach out to me. Let's see here. Okay, so the goals for our session. If we're gonna talk about board recruitment, we got to talk about what it means to be a board member. So we're gonna hit the highlights on board roles and responsibility. We're gonna talk about recruitment strategies, and then we're gonna talk about briefly a tech platform that can help with that called Board Build. So what does it mean? What is a board? A board is the fiduciary of an organization's resources and a guardian of its mission. And governance is its function, and board is the structure. So when we think about governance and management, these things can sometimes be the same, but oftentimes when we see boards, they're different. So governance is the what and the why, and management determines the how and the who in achieving an organization's goal. I like to take a step out of the environment that I'm in when I'm thinking of governance and management. And that's why you see this lovely picture of air traffic control and the airplane. Now, I will be honest with all of you, I am not an expert on flight, but I do like this analogy. So the board and board members, it's so important to be strategic about that recruitment because they're going to be air traffic control. Our boards for our nonprofits are people that are helping make sure that for every takeoff, there's a landing, that there's a clear charted course. The executive director and the staff of those boards, that's our flight crew, right? They're making those minute adjustments. They're taking in the environment and adjusting as needed. So roles and responsibilities. Throughout this presentation, I'll be using a resource called BoardSource. BoardSource has been around for many years. It is an incredible resource that has some free resources, but there's also some that you can pay to be a member and get around anything around bird service. So we'll talk about roles and responsibilities. When we think of the roles and responsibilities of a board member, I want you to picture these three big umbrellas. So it's establishing organizational identity, ensuring resources, and providing oversight. Excuse me. When we think about establishment of the organizational identity, that's an ensuring an effective plan. The The board members are the guardians of the mission, so they have to determine what that mission and purpose is and advocate for the nonprofit when they're out in the community and really living that mission to support the staff that's doing that boots on the ground work. Ensuring resources. So, of course, boards are responsible for selecting, vetting, and hiring a chief executive. So, whether that's the CEO of your nonprofit or the executive director, either title can be hired by the board. The ensuring adequate financial resources. Sometimes this is a given, right? When it comes to board service, a lot of people think just donations by the board, but it's more than that. It's really partnering with that staff and ensuring that you are helping socialize that mission and that you're acting as a true advocate in your areas of influence for your organization to build a competent board. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, board recruitment and building that competent board and enhancing the organization's public standing. Um, that's critical, right? So we are all in the court of public opinion to some degree, right? And especially when we're looking for nonprofits and when we look at fundraising and those sorts of things, organizations' public standing is critical. And then, of course, the governance portion, that providing oversight. So, evaluating the chief executive, monitor and strengthening programs, protecting the assets, and providing financial oversight. There should be checks and balances, right? Depending on a nonprofit, there is a requirement for an audit, making sure all of those things are taking place, and ensuring legal and ethical integrity. So, these are the really broad areas of roles and responsibilities that board members are entrusted with for an organization. But on the same token, there's still always going to be what brings the board member to the org. And so we like to talk about these as the 5 T's. So a board, being in board service is a commitment, right? It's a commitment of time. So time is our most sacred resource. Um, it's the one thing that we have a bit more limited and finite resource. So board members are willingly donating their time to an organization and their talent, whether that's their expertise professionally or something that they're just really passionate about and they're not able to utilize in the day to day. That's their talent. We have treasure. So treasure can mean a lot of things. And of course, it can mean um, monetary donation, but that can also mean skill sets, that can mean um, networks of influence. It can be so many things when we think about that. Testimony. So it's how this organization aligns with their personal mission and values that they try to uphold in their life. And ties. So sometimes, depending on the board member, there may not be an opportunity for there to be a large wealth investment, and that's okay. There are so many other ways to be a board member and to help really promote and connect with a nonprofit. And sometimes that's ties of influence, right? I may not be able to do something, but you know what? I know a CPA that could volunteer time for us. I know where we can go to get that resource, or I have an in for whatever tech we're requiring, or what have you. So it's really thinking about those 5 T's. And so I would challenge each of you that's on the meeting today, and this will be more of a reflective point for yourself. But when you think about the work that you either do with nonprofits or you would like to do with nonprofits, think about what are your 5 T's? What do you have to offer? And then help that guide where you would align with an organization. So the essentials steps for board recruitment, and we're going to dive into each of these individually, but this is going to be the whole 9 steps. 9, I know. Now, will this be all encompassing? No. This is the general framework. Nonprofits are the beautiful thing about the nonprofit sector, and the thing that gets me the most excited about working with nonprofits is there's general framework, but there's such nuance with each nonprofit of what they need and what they do and the level of creativity and innovation that they do in their work. So we're going to step one, we're going to identify. We're going to cultivate relationships. We're going to recruit. We're going to orientate, we're going to involve, we're going to educate, evaluate, rotate, and celebrate. So, are any of these steps something that anyone on the call finds interesting or something they necessarily wouldn't have thought about when it comes to board recruitment? For me, when I was first learning this, celebrate seems really like a given, but it's not something that I had necessarily thought to do other than, when a board member is rotating off a board or like a really big thing. But we'll talk about how celebrating even just movement, right? One step forward is still progress and what that looks like and how that can work in engagement.
Jess, I have a question. Excuse me.
Yep.
Are those 9 steps in order of how you should be going through the recruitment process?
Yeah, so when I think of the recruitment process, I think of it as kind of cyclical, and we'll talk about that because when it's coming to like cultivating relationships and recruitment, that's something that you want to be doing all the time. But to really start, yes, I think if you don't have that much of a strategy to begin with, starting in order is an easy place to come from. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I can't see anyone when I'm sharing screen, so I'm working off one monitor today. Okay, so the first step, if you're just starting fresh in board recruitment, is considering it's to identify the board's needs. So Jean is incredible and she'll be able to send these slides after. And I actually downloaded a document called a board matrix for you all. Oh, and it works. Okay, so you'll be able to click through it. And it's basically just a tailored matrix that tells you what you have on your board and what areas you're missing. Okay. So recruitment should be strategic, focused on skills, experiences, and perspectives your boards need to advance the mission. You can use a board matrix like this and to aim to reflect the diversity of your community, to avoid tokenism, but it also helps you think about when we think board recruitment is strategic, it should be where you are in your nonprofit life cycle, right? So if I have a board of my mythical nonprofit. And we're going to be recruiting a lot for this mythical nonprofit today. And the board has traditionally had 9 board members, and we focused really heavily on folks that had HR expertise. And that's amazing, right? But my nonprofit's entered a new season of life, and we're going to need to shift our focus to a capital campaign to expand. That doesn't mean that the board members that I have aren't incredible board members. But if I need more expertise on my board and I don't want to have to invest so much in a consulting area, then I may need to reevaluate the mix of the skill level on my board. And so a board matrix helps you look at that. So as you can see here, it's 9, but if you have 25 board members, then you can use this page or make it larger and customize it for you. This again is just a template, but it's your age range. Depending on the community that you serve, it can be important to have a really diverse mix of ages because you want there to be a reflection of your community in your board. So we have gender, race, and ethnicity. We have resources, community connections. So if I'm going to do a capital campaign, I may want a lot of business connections and a lot of media connections, right? Because people have got to know that what we're trying to do. Qualities, um, personal and style. So is it marketing and PR? Is it entrepreneur and communications, finance, administration? And these feel free to tweak what that needs to look like, right? And then expertise. Maybe it is that my board could really use someone with a finance background. Then that's the area that you start looking for people to recruit from. So when we're thinking of a board matrix and we've done an evaluation of our board and we see what we need, right? We know that maybe the board's incredible, but it's not reflecting the individuals that we serve. Then that's a need that we have for the board. And so the first thing you have to do is cultivate relationships. So build a pool of potential board members by engaging prospects early. So this, Sylvia, is that part where you're just always meeting people, you're always connecting with people, and you want to keep those relationships warm. So that way, as they grow to love your organization and they have a skill that your organization could utilize, you can cultivate that relationship. And that's on everybody's plate, right? That's not just the chair of the board. That's not just board members. That's staff. If you have a really robust volunteerism in your organization, volunteers are a great way to connect with other folks to be able to build and identify that talent pool. And you nurture the relationships over time, create strong future board leaders and other key supporters. We are talking about board members, but don't forget that if someone doesn't have the commitment of time when they're looking at their 5 T's, but they have talent or they have treasure or something they'd like to do, it doesn't necessarily have to be a board member. That's why we have committees on boards. We can have advisors. So I don't want you to feel pigeonholed in just having board members. So recruiting a prospective board member, you're going to engage that person, discuss their interests, their commitments. You're going to ask really thoughtful questions. Transparency is kindness. So if you're recruiting someone to be a board member, be realistic of what it means to be a board member for your organization. What is that time commitment? What is the culture of your board? What skills do they want to bring? I might assume I have a friend that's a CPA and they would want to do accounting, but really they're like, no, my undergraduate's in marketing and that's a muscle I have, but I haven't been able to flex in a while. And that's how I would want to serve. So being really engaged with that person to see what motivates and drives them. Boards should have governance committees. Again, committees are a huge way to not only engage board members in specific areas of interest, but also to prime sort of the pipeline for new board members as old ones roll off, because you don't necessarily have to be a board member to be on a committee. So governance committees typically will present a slate of vetted nominees. Now, that doesn't necessarily go for every nonprofit. That's just, we're talking generalized here for a strong fit. And then even though the governance committee vets them, it is the responsibility of the entire board to vote on fit. So when we're thinking of these early board recruitment strategies, are there any questions or best practices that you have had? Has anybody ever been on a board and you truly didn't know what you were getting into until you walked into that first board meeting? I have. To no fault to anyone, it just wasn't that standard practice because it is strategic and it is intentional. And I the first board I was ever on, I didn't know what Robert's Rule of Order was, and I was lost for a very long time in that first meeting. Because there just wasn't there was an assumption that I would know that, and I didn't. So orientation begins as soon as a prospective board member is approached. Remember, transparency is kindness. So knowing what the expectations are, does our board meet monthly? Does our board meet bi-monthly, quarterly? If you're on a committee, how often would that meet? What does that commitment look like? Ideally, and this is oftentimes a step missed because everyone is busy. Board service is not something you get compensated for. So it's in addition to whatever you do in your 9 to 5, right? Or in retirement. It's in addition to all of the other things that you do. But making sure that we onboard board members before the first meeting, share with them how the meeting flows. Look at old agendas. Are you running with a consent agenda? How are your meetings set up? Provide an online manual or online resources to support onboarding and to ensure a smooth transition. And during that orientation, also invite your new board member to connect with your existing board, not just the chair, not just the governance committee. Try to set up time for your board to connect with one another outside of just a board meeting. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but what that offers is a buy-in and engagement outside of that formal, more rigorous meeting time. So again, it's going to be that continuation, right? So you're supporting continuous board improvement. Connect board members, engage them. Have your board members really contemplate and figure out why they are connected to their mission. What is their why? Utilize technology for effective communication. Of course, in the before COVID times, meetings like this were not as common, right? But now, after we know that technology is so much more integrated with connecting one another, building an inclusive and cohesive team, that's going to really rely on your board chair. And what's the culture of your board like? There should be discourse on a board, right? There should be a push and pull of opinion, but there should be a compromise and a common ground found. So it's really being able to harness those interactions and be mindful of what that barrier may be, right? So we know that during board orientation, we would also talk about conflict of interest, and that would be something that we did every year with the entire board. And having the board get to know each other will foster an environment outside of just being board members, fosters an environment for them to be able to be like, hey, I see what you're saying, but let's play devil's advocate for a second, or what have you. So you're really getting that diverse and robust decision-making process. Board orientation, hopefully is not the only education that a board is getting. You want to promote continuous learning and board and effectiveness. So integrate activities into your board meetings when you can. Schedule retreats for deep dive when it's a complex topic. So for us here at CNE, because we are a partner and practitioner, we are ourselves a nonprofit. We're going through a strategic planning cycle. So with our board, we'll have a retreat with them. So that way we have some dedicated time to build that rapport, but to also really look at what the strategic plan is and for the board to have voice and choice in that, because again, they're air traffic control. So they're helping us plot that course to our destination, and we want them to be champions of that as well. There's external workshops and seminars. Any monthly workshop that we have at CNE, just a little plug, a board member, a volunteer, anyone just interested in nonprofits or looking for professional development is more than welcome to attend. And focus on key areas: strategic planning, fundraising, hands-on experience. Make sure that your board can truly speak to the work that you're doing, and that will help not only recruit other board members, but really let them be able to express their testimony when they're looking to connect with folks and build those relationships to connect with your organization. So the other thing is, so a big part, and this is continuous, and hopefully an annual process, is to evaluate the board. That's only fair, right? If I'm an employee of a nonprofit, I'm getting evaluated. The executive director or CEO is being evaluated by the board. It's important for the board to have a critical eye and evaluate itself. So that can be board meetings. It's always great to get a little bit of feedback on a board meeting. Like, is this working well? Could we change the process? What's going to be the most efficient? Um, Annual evaluations. So there's lots of evaluations you can use that help evaluate the board as a whole. Um, Identifies areas of strength and areas of growth. And in those areas of growth, you can also, the chair and the executive director can work together to build learning opportunities for those areas of growth, or it helps you identify maybe a skill set or an individual that you need to start building relationships with to recruit to the board. Individual assessments are really good for reelection purposes. As much as we love board members, and we love a board member, right? If you have term limits, which I hope that you do, that is the leading practice. Just because it says I'm your board member, and maybe I'm great, and I have been on for 3 years, but when you do the evaluation of the board, we realize that we really need someone with an IT background, and I'm up for renewal. It's okay to not automatically renew that board member. By setting the standard of evaluation and identifying the areas of need on the board, I can be an advisor. Maybe I really like Canva. That's not a maybe. I definitely really like Canva. So I can be an advisor for marketing and communications. And as I roll off, we can look to recruit someone in IT because that's what we need for the board. Because again, as a board member, I'm the guardian of the mission and a fiduciary of the organization. I want the organization to do well. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm the right person to do that. Uh, Rotating board members. So board limits are encouraged and renewal is not guaranteed. Rotation helps prevent stagnation and encourages ongoing energy and engagement. Again, if you've had a board member, maybe you don't have term limits, you invoke term limits, and you've had a board member that's been through it with you and they've been in it for the long haul. That's great. They can be an advisor, which is going to be a non-voting person that comes in and gives counsel on an expertise. That's great. That doesn't mean the person has to leave the organization. That just means the person leaves the board. And sometimes those things can be a little bit tricky, right? That can be a really hard conversation. But it's so important to be able to make sure that you are bringing in new ideas and perspectives to have that diverse approach to your board. Um, and there's always volunteer opportunities, there's always committees, and there's always advisory that a board member could do. And then the last part of that is you want to celebrate. Celebrate the members and celebrate the achievements. I think, like I was saying at the beginning of this section, it's really easy to acknowledge, your service and recognizing big milestones, but don't forget to celebrate achievements along the way. The deepening of relationships, highlight an impact that's happened because of the board's guidance or because of a board's member skill set to really motivate them to keep them engaged. Because again, board service is such a unique thing because it is not someone's job, right? They're doing it because of their 5 Ts. They're doing it because they feel connected to the mission and vision of the organization. So what are some of the ways that you've celebrated your board, or some of the ways you could celebrate a board? For me, I think, if you set a retreat, that's a lot of time that a board member is going to dedicate to a more complex issue. Make a celebration at the end. Progress is worth celebrating. I am notoriously guilty personally of not celebrating the small wins. and just looking at that next run and that next goal. But to motivate people and to keep people engaged, it's so critical to make sure that we're taking a moment, taking a breath, acknowledging progress that is being made, and celebrating that. So when we reflect on the 9 steps, now that we've went through them, are there any steps that you find surprising, or any steps that you're like, my organization crushes this step? We do amazing. Is it educate? Are you constantly cultivating relationships? Is everyone at your org holding that lens to be like, I'm connecting with someone, this person would be great for this, or this is how this person could fit into our mission? And it's a practice, right? Practice means that it will not be perfect. And practice also means that it won't be stagnant. So there'll be things that really work well for your organization and things that don't work as well. But the point is to be always adaptive and innovative to your organization, your mission and values, to ensure that your board is fulfilling that. And when we think of boards, it's also important when we're looking at evaluation, and I meant to speak to this earlier. In that evaluation piece, it's also important to be critical of board size. Is your board the right size? And that's something that your board can determine together. Depending on how your bylaws are set up, that could be something that is set up in that. And you always want to refer to that, but figure out what your mix looks like. Is it better to have a leaner board during this stage of the life cycle that we are in? Is it better to have a more robust board because we have a capital campaign and we're in strategic planning and we're working on overhauling our human resources? And so those are all questions that you would have. And that's questions that the board will ultimately make the decision on, but the staff should be informing the board in that process as well. So how can tech help? So we talked about a lot of things. CNE is really excited. We're getting ready to launch an exclusive partnership with Board Build. And it's essentially, if you think about like a Match.com, but it's for nonprofits and community leaders that would like to be board members. And so we're launching it through the whole state of Virginia. Um, and it's going to be connecting nonprofits to board members and equipping community leaders to serve effectively. So for a nonprofit, they'll be able to post, and this is actually hyperlinked in the slide. So you can, once you get the slide, you can click on it and it'll go to the landing page. Nonprofits can post board positions for free. And that allows them to be able to recruit skilled board members. And there's also the Essentials of Nonprofit Board Governance training on there. So it's a 6-module asynchronous course that folks can take if they, like me, for my very first board service, had never even heard of Robert's Rule of Order and might need just a little bit more support before they get on there. Community members can use it as an opportunity to build a skill set, to really build what that leadership lens looks like. It also allows you to create a profile. And if my background has always been in accounting, but what I really want to stretch a muscle and what I really want to grow to on a board is my love for marketing, then that's something that I can put there. The cool thing about it, it's also a really great leadership tool for business. So if you wanted to invest in leadership development opportunities for your staff, you can buy multiple session seats and they don't have to be used at once. And then as people are coming up through leadership programming, you can say, hey, I'd love you to take these modules. They could be matched with the board, but it's also a great way to really learn that fundamental community leadership skills that's needed for a board, but also translate to so many other things. We do have a code, so it's CNE50, so you get 50 seats off a board. But it's a really cool website because it helps, right? If I'm certified as if I've taken the courses and I'm certified and I build my personal profile and Sylvia at ASD has a board opening and we align that it'll match. Now, is that going to be make sure that that's the only fit and the only parameters you need? Of course not. But it really will help match younger professionals or folks that are especially newer to our communities, really be able to invest and give back into the communities that we serve. So, what questions do you all have around board recruitment strategy or board build or roles and responsibilities? Any questions do you all have around the topics we've covered today? All right. Well, as always, oh, I'm going the wrong direction. Oh, okay. So, because evaluation is important in everything that we do, especially when we do quick lunch and learns like these, I would ask those of you that are on this meeting to scan this QR code with your smartphone. And you can take a quick survey just to give me feedback on this and to give me any ideas for what you would like to see in the future. And I will share this evaluation information with Mark and Jean as well. Oh, let me put that up there for just one more moment. And again, these slides will be yours, so you'll be able to take your time with them and really dig in with your nonprofit or with yourself to really evaluate if you want to be a board member. What are your 5 T's? What are the things that make you really passionate? And if you're looking to recruit board members, what are you missing? How can you be strategic in making sure that the mission is embodied by your organization?
Any additional questions for Jess? Anything else? Well, Jess is somebody that's been involved in a lot of nonprofit boards. This is very helpful information. We appreciate you coming to us from Charlottesville today. And that was wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next regularly scheduled New Knowledge is the first Tuesday in November, will be Wednesday, November 5th. Expanding your products or services beyond the U.S. with state funding with Mike Downey, who is the Virginia Economic Development Partnership local representative who's located here at the Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubator. You can visit, as usual, our YouTube channel for other informative programs about business. And thanks again to our partners, the Town of Abingdon, Washington County Chamber of Commerce, and Washington County, or Virginia Highlands Small Business Incubators. So thank you all. Thank you, Jess, and everybody have a good day.